Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another just incredibly fascinating, super cool episode of Beyond Dimensional. We are your hosts. I'm Liz.
I'm Lori.
And we are so lucky because today we get to welcome back a very special friend. It is the incredible Branden. I know. Just hold your applause. Really, truly amazing.
Oh,
I
shucks.
feel it. I can feel it, the vibrations of humans clapping their hands. So he is an expert in astral projection, remote viewing, and tarot reading to just like start the list of things that he can talk about. And if you haven't listened to his initial interview with us, stop, collaborate and listen. I'm just kidding. No, seriously, it's really good. So just head back to the pod, to the main pod page and scroll to a couple episodes ago because it is worth a listen. But don't worry about that right now. You can stay right where you are and listen to us take a deep dive with him. Previous episode was a lot about his beginnings, was a lot about how he got started and what his gifts are. And now we are going to take some time to really hone in on the subject of his astral travels and what he's brought back from his visits. Without further ado, I will stop chatting. Branden, everybody. Hey.
Hello, how's it going? How's
Welcome
it
back.
going?
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We were just talking before we started about all the things we could keep you here for hours and days and weeks to talk about. So we definitely have to get you recorded on a regular basis so we can go through every topic. But today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is religion and religious concepts and Christianity and Christian concepts, because, I hate organized religion, but I'm so fascinated by the history of it. And I'd love to learn all the things but we only have 45 to 50 minutes. So I guess I get some of the things.
Mhm.
But gosh, where do you want to start, guys?
Oh, man. Branden.
Wheel,
Do
wheel,
do.
wheel, turn, turn, turn. Tell me a time that we
Yeah.
should learn.
Flip a coin? I
Exactly.
don't
So I
know.
I
know
love it.
in you had mentioned before we came on to the recording that we had talked about this previous time in the Bible that I had traveled back to. Um,
Yes.
so when I was a little boy, one of the only books that I could really get my hands on as a young child was the Bible. It was, I mean, come on, it was easy. It was everywhere, right? Uh,
Everywhere.
so
Every hotel
I
room.
had one at like 5 years old, 6 years old, and I started reading it. I didn't fully comprehend everything about it, but there were certain passages that I would read, and then I would feel myself leaving my body. But it's strange to say that because it felt more like my body was dropping down below me. It felt like it was just like I was in one place and everything just went. And
Wow.
from there, I could find myself in a new space or a new place. And one of those times happened to be the passage, and forgive me, I forget where it is because I no longer own a Bible. I haven't opened one in many, many years. It's been a long time since I was a practicing Baptist, so I just kind of emptied my head and took on better information.
Yeah, I hear you.
Fair.
There is a passage in there where they talk about two sects of priests, one from Christianity and one from the pagan belief systems. And they had two wooden bonfires set up, and the challenge was whoever's God is real, may they light the bonfire and may it ignite. What I saw was the priests from the Catholic or from the Christianity era. They are the ones that actually set up all of the pyres. And when they did, they put more moist logs on their competitor pyre so
You're
it
saying they
wouldn't
cheated?
catch fire. They absolutely
Sounds like a
cheated.
bunch of fucking cheaters to me.
But to be fair, I have actually like gone back in that time period. I've spent more time
Yeah.
with other customs, other cultures. I've walked through different gardens. So when I say gardens, I mean like different lands, different places, because the world looked different back then. It wasn't
Yeah.
all desert over there. It was very lush. It was very beautiful. It looked very much like how I would imagine a toned down version of the rainforest would look. That was natural. That was natural climate thing. What ruined that was the river stopped flowing. So it was just a natural formation change. But back then, it was kind of customary that if you were challenging people, you would try to always win, no matter what. If you were caught, you were screwed. But it was very customary to always try to cheat.
Interesting. Okay, let me go back and make sure I understand. So you're saying you saw this at a younger age when you're reading the Bible, you transported there or whatever, but you started seeing it during this time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Got
Yes.
it. Okay. Got it.
I
Okay.
think it was like 8 at the time.
Okay. Got it.
So this was a little bit later, and I had read it and reread it and read it and reread
Got
it.
it.
But it was at that time period that I went back and I saw that they used more moist logs
Got it.
inside of their competitor's pyre, and they had an igniter in theirs. So when they raised their hand, it was a signal for someone else to spark the igniter and to catch theirs on fire. It looks
Okay.
like it came from above because the igniter went all the way up to the very top and ignited the top first and then burned down.
Wow.
Hmm.
That was the start of the fall for me in believing in Christianity, was starting to see things like that.
Yeah.
The deception.
Yeah, like I didn't like that because I was raised
I
with a
mean, who
good
likes that?
pastor. Like when I was in Baptist, like early, I had a really great pastor. He was very much a humanitarian.
Hmm.
I still adore the man as a human being. I believe he's been through a lot, so he has a bigger heart for people.
Mm-hmm.
When you can envision, like, that's a good preacher, that was him.
Mm.
So, and also my first Sunday school teacher sat me on her lap when I was just waking up. It was just after. She sat me on her lap and she's like, Brandon, don't forget, you're a witch.
Mm.
And this was an older
Oh.
woman that used to babysit my dad.
Wow.
So, and it was just so surprising to hear that it just stuck in my head. But that's also what got me started in, I guess I should do a little bit of a better setup with this to help explain it. So, because I'm one of those people that I never stop asking why or how or what or where, I got into this habit that when I heard somebody say something about anything, if it struck my curiosity, I would go, I really wonder about that. And I would find myself at nighttime when I'd go to bed, leaving my body and going to that time period or to that place. I've walked the streets of Paris and I've never been. When I went to New York several years ago for a job, I was walking through the streets leading a friend of mine who lives there, and I had never been to New York. The
Wow.
most New York updated map that I had in my head was from the 1800s. But because I
Wow.
love New York so much, I've walked those streets because I grew up with that being more in movies that I was watching as a kid than Los
Yeah.
Angeles or any other place. So I would
Mm-hmm.
find myself leaving and going to walk around New York just because, hey, why not? You know? And nobody ever told me as a kid, you can't do that
Yeah.
because I kept my mouth
I mean,
shut.
yeah.
I didn't
Yeah. I
tell
was like,
people
who's
what
going
I
to
was
tell you if you don't
doing.
tell them?
So
Yeah.
my family knew that something was happening, but they couldn't tell what was happening because I had like little tells here and there. Around the same time that I
Hmm.
had that outer body experience where I went back and I saw them building the bonfires, sometime within that same year, I was really curious and I said, I wonder what it's like up in space. And I
Mm.
felt myself leaving my body, and then my head went, no, you can't do that. You can't breathe up there. And I slammed down so hard into my body again that my bed frame broke.
Wow.
And my mom came running upstairs, my sisters from the other room, and everybody was yelling at me because I broke the bed. And when you grow up poor,
Okay.
you can't afford another bed.
Yeah.
So,
They're like,
like,
you're asleep on the floor now.
yeah. And they had no idea how I did it because I was laying in the bed and I was still in the same position that my mom had just left me in maybe 20, 30 minutes prior.
Wow.
So, and that's like a story my mom used to remind me about when I was a teenager. and we had come to California. She's like, I'm really glad you don't do that anymore.
Can't afford it.
Yeah.
Separate
Bring
the money.
beds.
She's like,
Yeah.
No more of those.
Yeah, that's
So
So what are
funny.
some other experiences you've had as far as kind of fact checking, the Bible, so to speak?
so you guys have heard of King Solomon, right?
For sure.
Yeah, but remind me because I'm Jewish and paid very little attention to anything.
Well, he's he's also very Jewish,
Yeah,
big in
he's Old
he's
Testament guy.
old. He
Way
was supposedly one of the greatest kings. He
old.
was one of the first magicians on Earth. He was given a powerful ring to command the demons of the earth to do his bidding and build his temples, build his cisterns, build his water systems, his gardens, everything else of that sort. Uh, he was always a fascinating character for me. So I would always go back because I love the architecture of that time. And that's what I would spend a lot of my time looking at when I'd go back. Tasting the foods because I love food. And oh my gosh, it was really terrible back then because some
A
things
lot of
had
salt.
no flavor, had no flavor. But the parties were always fun. And as a little kid, and not being able to stay up with adults, going to parties was kind of fun. Going, oh, look at me. Like, yeah, you can't see me. I'm here partying with you. Which is probably why I became a raver kid later on.
To be
But
seen.
yeah, exactly. Like, hey, but I would end up spending a lot of time in the court just paying attention to things as well. And as I got older, I started to, I guess, realize that I guess at some point in my youth, I can't really tell you when this happened. It just kind of happened one day when I started to see auras. And one day I was walking in the inner space and I looked over at the king and I went, there's something weird about you, man. You look weird. And I didn't think anything about it until much later on. In fact, in the last couple of years, when I got really sick a couple of years ago from a bad allergy, and it was something that I just couldn't fix. And I spent a lot of my energy, a lot of my practice, like focused on that and healing from that. But it also meant that I was leaving my body a lot more as well. And when I was leaving my body, there was one night that I couldn't take the pain that I was feeling anymore. And I cried out and I said, hey, if there's anybody out there that's going to help me, if there's anyone out there that can actually come forward and heal me, can you please step forward? Can you please do something about this? Because I can't take this anymore. And a spirit walked forward, and it was a very friendly looking spirit. I mean, I grew up with the Thundercats. Lionel was like my favorite.
Hmm.
And to see like this lion formed man was like one of those, wow, this looks so cool. He came and he actually helped to remove a lot of the stuff from me.
Wow.
And as he was doing so, I asked who he was, and he said, find me tomorrow. I'll tell you tomorrow. And when I was mentioning in the last episode that I sometimes will use TikTok or YouTube or social media as a bibliomancy tool, I had opened up YouTube, and the very first video had his face on it. And this is how
Wow.
I know I'm having actual experiences. And this is how
Yeah.
I can tell like my clients you're having actual experiences is when they tell you something and they show up.
Mhm.
But when I started doing more investigation, more research, and started having more conversations with the spirit, I saw his aura was almost identical in the funkiness that the king's was. So I went back in memory and I was paying attention to the scene playing out in my memory of like what did I actually see? And that's when I met King Osmodius, who was disguised as the king. He
You know
gave me
about
the
him.
scene and said,
I
yeah,
do.
I stepped in and kind of took over. And I let everybody believe he was coming the demons of the land. We were building this for us. This was our palace.
Yeah, it sounds like him.
We never had centralized space. And if we can make
Yeah.
people believe what we want them to believe, Look, they're enjoying their food, they're enjoying their parties, they're enjoying their wine, they're enjoying their lives here. What am I doing wrong? So I came back from that, and the lion figure that had helped me previously was standing there waiting for me in my just beyond my vision. And I asked him a little bit further, well, why are you here? And he explained, he's like, well, I used to kind of babysit you as a kid. I helped talk you into feeling how to heal people. I was one of the teachers that helped you to learn how to unlock that and become the healer
Mm,
that you have been. And that's President Marbus, who is another infernal, similar to Osmodius.
interesting.
But the difference between them is one of them is very much embracing his like descent, and the other is saying, one day I'll be back up there again in the virtues. So I do good virtues as I can.
Hmm.
Asmodeus, Marcus.
The whole demon angel thing is such a interesting concept and topic too, because those are Christian concepts. Demons, angels, the way that we think about them, good versus evil, dark versus
Right.
light. We have a friend that works with demons and other entities, which is new for us, new for me too. I had never really, I was beat to death that if you see a demon or a demon's coming for you, you're about to be tortured, possessed, or taken to burn
Hmm.
in some hellish
Yeah.
fire, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always been terrified. In fact, even as I was first really reading people, I would literally, before I would read someone, be like, I only want things from the light. I don't want any demons. I don't want anything scary. And now just hearing from people and hearing what you're saying, it's another example of what we were taught to fear was such crap. And there's so much untapped potential there and what we could learn and experience in this lifetime if we kind of got away from some of those Christian concepts as the be all end all absolute truth and the one and only way.
Mhm.
I don't know why I got on that tangent, but
No, no, no.
it's interesting to me.
It's all about control.
Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
gonna ask Brandon, from your experiences, and like it's interesting to note about like King Solomon's, I use this term loosely, possession. But
Just
King
borrowing the
Asmodeus is
body.
just loaning it, it's just like, oh,
I
I
mean,
left my ID at the counter and I took it for a spin.
it's not
But
really a possession when he kind of drop kicked
yeah,
the king to the other side of the world and just
for sure.
transformed and took on the visage of the king.
Fair, fair. It was just more of a deception. It was like a Mission Impossible face borrow. You just had a mask on.
I wear the clothes of the king, so therefore I am king.
There you
Dress for the
go.
job you want, as I say. But, from all of our kind of understandings of organized Judeo-Christian, I'll use that term, like that kind of more general term of it. What's been the storyline that you know of as being how that really happened? Like we all know, Jesus was the son of God. Like, and by saying we know, we were told, like the good book says, that Jesus is the son of God, and he walked on water, and he turned water to wine, and he healed the sick, and blah. He was a carpenter, and blah blah blah. And my people are like, yo, he was a Jew who just happened to be talking, and everybody was like, oh, that sounds interesting. We should just name this new religion after this guy, right? Like there's a lot of history to it, but from your experiences, what part of that was accurate and what part of that was just total BS and was written into what we see?
As the control manual, the control manifesto.
Want hellfire. I don't need hellfire. I've already
No, we
been
do
through
not bring
enough
hellfire.
crap.
Not from us
Okay.
anyway.
So anyone that wants to give hellfire, may it just be their
Don't.
own
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, if you're
demise.
listening to this and you're hyper religious, first of all, you're in the wrong place. Secondly, we're here to be open minded and to accept realities that some of us may not know from our education. So we're just here to accept and listen to, be open minded to new possibilities.
So I know of the story of Jesus through Dionysus. I don't know 100% how accurate it is, but I really like the way that he was, how my dad has shared this uh, with me. And there's a lot of, I can't say there's a lot of, but there is some documentation in other places that he did not just stay in the Middle East, that he went down to Egypt. He studied under the Magi down in Egypt. At that time, I guess it was still Kemet. So he went down there, he studied their magics, he studied their science as well, which helped him to be able to do the water to wine because he knew how to properly shift that. I can't explain that. It's not a magic that's been unlocked to me yet. So I can't fully go into detail about that just yet. I'm still kind of studying. He also went to the Far East, to India, and he studied under the yogis for several years. This is what he did when he disappeared from a child to the time he came back at the age of 30. He was a man that taught, and that's all he really was. He did not show what he could do unless he needed to prove that what he said was true. And that should always be taken in a rare situation because it's not one's magic is not typically supposed to go for others unless you are supporting the community. So by demonstrating this more and more, it could be leading others to misinterpret what you're doing and to deify you as what has happened. He was a regular at the Dionysian parties in Greece as well in his 20s because he was dealing with madness. There was a lot of awakening that was happening for him. And when we do those awakenings, it creates madness. So one way that they used to handle that is to dance. He also learned some magic. I don't want to use the word magic in this case. He learned certain aspects from the very early, I guess now they would be the Sufis, but back then that's not what they were called, and I'm not recalling what they were called, but he learned how to do those whirls, how to dervish, how to let go of himself and just expand out so he could handle what he was experiencing. Uh when he found himself again, that's when he returned and he started to what we call now proselytize. He started to talk about his experiences. He shared what he knew, but he wasn't the only one. There were many individuals that were walking through the whole region because of the trades that would go through. This was not to say his story specifically, but he had really great presence, almost like he had a really good PR team. Okay, there's a German band, Oomph, that has this song, God is a Pop Star. And that kind of always triggers me and thinks like, yeah, he kind of is with the way he's treated.
I've listened to Dolores Cannon, and she, some of what she talks about, just as one example, but there's many, to talk about how he was someone teaching others, to what you're saying. He was trying to help other people see what they could do. That, I don't know if magic's the right word either, but that they could provide for themselves, that they could do, the manifestation all on their own, that there was a lot inside of them as opposed to outside. And then it all turned into the complete opposite fact.
It was when
Yeah.
it became capitalized.
Yeah. Control.
Hmm.
Uh, but there was a prophet that actually approached Peter and congratulated him and said, "You'll be the first pope."
Hmm. I
And
don't think
that's
I
what
knew
kind
that.
of spawned a lot of that belief system.
Hmm.
I mean, Pope
Hmm.
wasn't the word that was actually used, but it was definitely like a pontiff. You'll be the first leader. You'll be the first, person who creates the next wave of what we have.
Hmm. Interesting.
Mm. So the tendency for me is to go, oh, everyone's crazy, knowing like, oh, water turns to wine because you fucking soak some grapes into a vat and let the sit with the rainwater and it ferments. And of course, yeah, water does turn to wine in 90 days or however long it's fucking harvest and all that shit, right? Like, yes, sure, you could kind of explain away a lot of things. He healed the sick. Maybe he put like some sort of herb on their forehead and that take away their, you know what I mean? Like there was Thanks. He's giving me
Yes, yes.
the nose, the right on the nose, guys. Nailing it. Like he's learned all of these kind of holistic measures. I'm the tendency right now is to be like the whole book is bullshit. It's all stupid and all it's based on is really the understanding that the son of God is like from paganism, right? It's from astrology, it's from paganism and like the understanding of like the sun is God and the fruits of its labor are nature's, abundance and blah blah blah, right? Like there's a lot of through lines with that story too, and when people have talked about it, and that Jesus wasn't even a real thing and it was all just interpreted to control people. And then what you're saying is that no, the guy actually did exist and they used him as almost like a front guy because he brought all these learnings and they just kind of used him and these were real things like people talk about now. Like I could not say, Brandon, if like you're talking about he was from the Middle East and then he traveled to India. I was like, back when he was there, like, what did he have? Like 16 horses, giving him thousands of horsepower to get to
He
India. Like it would have taken
walked.
him months to get there. Like there was no, I was like, it would have taken so long to get to India.
Yeah.
Like he did spend 30 years just like wandering through the desert trying to get to India. Like it just seems very crazy to me that like that's like he just spent a bunch of time in India and then walked back and like somehow survived it. But like, and I don't say this to question you, I say this because there's just so many possibilities in my mind of like how this could all make sense. But now I'm thinking like maybe he was in the next region over, but he was astral projecting to India and learning from people. Like, is that possible? Could he have been like doing a like I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to oversimplify this. I'm a healer in my own way, right? I don't heal anybody, but I can provide space for people to heal themselves. I can use energy to do that. I can use herbs and I can cast a spell and I can work on whatever, right? Wasn't that what he was doing?
Right. Are
Isn't
we just
it?
saying he was a witch?
Yeah, maybe that's right. Like,
Well,
was he just another witch like the rest of us bitches, witches?
different.
Yeah, so tell me.
Different. But
But
there
yeah,
are different branches of magic, like there are different branches of the tree.
sure.
It all comes from a similar source, but like
Yeah,
we do not have the same tree throughout the world, yet it is all connected in the same network. It is the same with magic. Different
yeah,
strokes for different folks.
yeah.
Okay.
So his magic was different.
His magic was honed.
Yeah, like another
It
level.
was free from what we currently like have as constant distraction. If you were a nomad, that was more acceptable to say you were nomadic than you were to say you were homeless because you were kicked out of your homeland.
Yeah, got it.
So his mother, and his father, and a couple other siblings all left and they became nomadic. And it was because of his father's, like, he was not stupid. He knew how to market this virgin birth.
Mm-hmm.
And they learned a lot of things when they went to India and they like on their route and they heard all of these mythos that existed and of all of these individuals that were being given a virginal birth that just kind of look, the seed was implanted and boom, like there was no sex involved, it's
Like my worst nightmare.
you're gonna wake up tomorrow, you're 9 months pregnant.
Oh, where's wood? I need to knock on something. Oh God, I'm terrified.
Sorry.
But yeah, like he
Lucky.
went on these journeys and he became nomadic, and he wasn't the only one that learned these. His siblings, some of them learned these things as well, from what I've understood. I have only seen Jesus from across the room in like when I'm traveling, and I'm not even still 100% certain that that was Jesus. Like, I was told, "Oh yeah, that's who you call Jesus." And that was from a spirit that I
Okay.
trust. It's from a spirit that I know really well. But I also know they bullshit a lot. So I'm still on that like fence
Hmm.
of where this individual is. If we think about it, like, oh yeah, he was nailed to a cross, he died, and then he rose 3 days later. It's kind of like one of those like, was he a vampire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
give me
is
a
that
phone.
also how he got Lazarus out of the cave? Because he bit
Yeah.
Lazarus at one point. And this is just me fanficking. This is just me fanficking. Total disclaimer here. This is just me
Yeah.
fanficking.
Well,
Were vampires a bigger thing in the Bible than we know?
Probably.
well, I mean, were they nails or were they stakes? We weren't there.
I mean,
Yeah.
or was
We
he
don't know.
just, having a really good time with the Roman soldiers?
Sure, I would be if I could astral project. Hell yeah, I'd be at that party.
Right?
Oh
So,
my gosh.
but like, I highly recommend anybody that wants to get into this, like, some things that I learned on how to just do this is never question. Just go with it. When you're in this, when you're going through this, when you're experiencing this, let there be no questions of doubt on what is happening, what you're experiencing. Write about your experience, document your experience with video or with audio, whatever you are most comfortable with.
But I love that you just said that. And I think that's such a valuable lesson for everyone. It's just like allow possibility. And I think that's why, the disclaimer we had before we got into this, when you were like, okay, I don't want to get some hellfire here. But that's what we're trying to do. And we appreciate you being on the journey because we're just trying to allow for possibilities to exist for people. Try to open doors we didn't know were doors. Like if that's a keyhole, let's try and turn it and see what happens. Like, why not? Because what the hell else are we going to do in this life? Just be totally closed off to possibilities? That sounds boring and terrible.
Right? And why be boring? Why be
100%.
boring? You
It
know?
also
Ugh,
sounds stupid.
it
You're
does
not
sound
very
stupid.
smart if you're just taking someone else's word for it and going, that's it, and I'll just live like that and whatever. I'm sorry, but let's use our own brains,
Mhm.
try to take information, assess it, use our own filter, take what we think makes sense, get rid of what doesn't, and move on from there. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what's real and not real.
No.
And what's real for me might not be real for you. We all have different experiences and perceptions, different timelines we live in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these factors,
Hmm.
right? It's just learning and trying to figure it out. It's like we were talking
Yeah.
about before we got on and started recording. We are talking about the Conscious Life Expo that went on, and some of that stuff, Liz and I were like, is this I don't want to be rude and disrespectful to people because in a lot of those situations, they absolutely believed it was real. And that's all that matters. It doesn't have to fit for me. They believed it. They were happy with it. Great. I went on to do my own thing. And I
Yeah.
think this is very, similar concept. It's like you're giving us information of what you've seen and what you've come to understand. And that's all it is, right?
Hmm.
A lot of it resonates with me because I know in my soul and every soul I've ever embodied that Christianity and organized religion and all the stuff we're being told is incorrect. And I don't care what anyone else believes. I only care when it's being used to control what I'm doing, which is a whole other issue.
For me
Yeah.
personally,
Anything.
anything organized that takes children from their parents, from their
Yeah.
tribes, from their cultures, and
Yeah.
indoctrinates them, or they get no bread, they get no soup, leaving them
Yeah.
in cold clothes and
Yeah.
having countless graves at this point being rediscovered and talked about. Like anything that can do that is not of a light aspect. That is
Yeah.
something that for me is so undignified and disgusting. And when you can preach about caring for your people and you can say things like, hey, we need to support our communities, but they're on the phone the minute ICE hits town and
Yeah.
reporting everybody that they can. That to me is also like, you used to be a beacon of sanctuary. We have the Hunchback of Notre Dame that designates that sanctuary. Call for it,
Yeah.
and you can't be touched by the law. And
Yeah.
yet, you open your doors for the law to come in. Or you can build these massive structures
Yeah.
and have no connection to your community and just honk around town and your big old like gas guzzling things destroying our environment more because America, how are you preaching the words of your designated God?
Yeah.
You're preaching something that is so vile and you can't see the spell that's over your eyes. Like you can't see how terrible you are. And this isn't to go for all Christians, because I have had many Christians in my life that were good Christian. They knew the Bible. Like I was mentioning, like my preschool teacher, my
Yeah.
Sunday school teacher, like she sat me on her lap, and this was an old woman that used to babysit my dad. She sat me on her lap when I was in that whole like Sunday school, preschool time period, and I had just woken up. And she said, Brandon, you're a witch. Don't ever forget that. And I haven't. I mean, I'm 41 now, and I still haven't forgotten that. I will
Yeah.
never forget Miss Penny.
Oh, Miss Penny.
Yeah.
That's so cute. Of course she's Miss
And
Penny.
Like at the end of the day, there's a few filters that we have to go through life with. Is it said or done through hate? Does it impact other people, and at what level, and who's benefiting, right? If I make decisions that only benefit me, fuck everybody else, I'm no better, than the scum that I complain about, right? Like always babbling.
No, but that does go back to the Conscious Life Expo, and I don't want to harp too much on this because the last
Oh,
episode, if you guys have listened, Lori and I talked about one particular, our first particular experience there in Branden. If you want to shed some light on it, because it's kind of related. There's the concept of organized religion, from pop culture, from
yeah.
like a mega church and like all this kind of stuff, is that there's a leader, and they're proselytizing, right? They're up there on their pulpit and they're giving the speech and they're doing the whole song and dance, and a lot of it's televised, and they're doing like literal performances that cost a lot of money, and then they get a lot of money and all this. And a smaller scale, we were there watching someone channel a fifth dimensional being. It was interesting because we watched her transition, which was like milliseconds. It was not like she didn't do a whole performative thing, which I kind of appreciated, but also it was like, is that enough time to bring him in? So, it kind of happened really quickly. We mentioned to you that the women who next to her, who were supposed to be helping to hone the energy and right and protect her, were doing this.
you're holding her space so that she doesn't get lost, essentially.
And
Yes,
that's that
something
that's
like
that
that.
mudra will do that because it's a grounding. It's pointed towards the
Got it.
earth. So
Yes.
if
So
they're holding space, which I don't understand how they'd be helping her, because mudras
there's something
aren't,
like
from what
containing.
I know, mudras
Yeah.
aren't something you do on people. Mudras are
I
things that
mean,
you do on you.
I don't know what they were doing with it, but they didn't say anything about this, but I just saw them doing this. So I was like, they must be doing something to somehow point the energy, or I don't know, control the surroundings. And for those who can't see, I'm doing this kind of, it almost looks like a vagina, but or uterus, but it's my thumbs. Your thumbs are together, and your like index or middle fingers are pointed together. So it's like a
Triangle,
little
right?
upside down triangle. So they were doing that in their moment. She brought a being on named Zazar, an alien being from the fifth dimension, and had an accent. It had a dialect and a style to the voice. It was very witty. It was very connected and very sharp, knew all about our intricacies, had previously had encounters with other humans that were in this room, had, who had visited him before. They had a photo of him. It looked like it was printed out from the cast of Avatar, and, blue, long hair, ears. It was almost this like very fantastical thing that was so beyond a human understanding that it was believable. And I don't want to say it wasn't, or it was, but at some point they brought on a woman to do some sort of chant, and was holding on to the back of another person, and it started to get this very like mega church feel for Lori. She was like, nope, I'm done. Like I could see her on the side of my vision just going, absolutely not. We're done here. And so,
The
from your
healing has
perspective,
begun. I'm like,
yes.
oh, well.
But on the other side of it, it was all the messages from this being was very positive. It was all about unity. It was all about finding love and finding light in people, and ignoring the bad shit that you can pull in when you're an empath, and making sure that you are looking for the light in people, because that's how we will find our ascension, right? The gateway to ascension. That was the whole thing. Thoughts on that real quick related to religion slash spiritual.
Grab your popcorn, people.
Uh-oh.
I'll wait a second.
Put the raisinets. That's what we
I
said
opened
last time. Popcorn and raisinets.
So to unpack everything, I can't necessarily talk ill of anybody else that's in my industry without
Yeah, for sure.
observing them, without knowing them, without experiencing what they're doing and breaking it down.
We're certainly,
No,
yeah, we're not trying to talk ill about it. We're trying to understand it and kind of get another person's perspective.
definitely. Yeah, unfortunately for them, people came in with that kind of experience like Lori and they get turned off by it, so it sucks.
Other channelers have so many performative expressions that they go through in order to get into the position. I don't
Yeah.
understand that. That's actually kind of what keeps me out from the public light most of the time, and what's kind of kept me from sharing as an adult with more people. Oh, yeah, you want me to channel your grandmother? You sure you want that? Because I can channel your grandmother. If that happens, then that means I'm going to be acting like your grandmother, which means I'm going to be saying things that your grandmother would say. And we got to remember, Granny might not always be sweet and nice. I'm going to channel her true self, what you might not have seen. Same thing with any spirits of the land, spirits of the house, spirits of the deities. When I pull these in, they're not inhabiting my body. They're coming right here, or they're touching different parts of me to let me know, hey, it's me.
Hmm.
If I'm going to be doing a channeling session, I'm most likely going to be listening to music before I do my channeling. That helps me to get more into a sync expression between my hemispheres. People that do performative things where they're on stage and they're doing these deep breaths, I do know that that is a yoga technique, and it is taught to people that are trained to channel to help them get oxygen flowing, which gets them out of their body, which now allows room for something else to come in. As to being able to say fifth dimension, 10th dimension, out of sync with us, or whatever anything that these other channelers are stating, it baffles me because I feel, for me, when I channel, we're inhabiting the exact same space. Even if I'm not channeling these spirits, we're still in the same exact space. It's
Yeah.
just experienced differently and not dimensionally. For other aliens, I've never channeled an alien. I don't know what that would be like, so I can't speak to that. I've never channeled something from another dimension that is weird, but I have seen things come through. And some people will say, oh, it's a being from a fifth dimension that walked through. But to me, it's like, no, that's just another room of the house. It's no different for me
Mm-hmm.
dimensionally. And
Yeah.
maybe these individuals have training, or maybe they have experiences that help them to understand how far away in dimension these things are. Is stepping into another dimension, which is also for me like I'm choosing a different path that I want to step into.
Yeah.
Or someone's opened up a door to another room and I just
Yeah.
can't see into the room because the room is dark.
Interesting. Well, I thank you for that does help, even though I know you're just really just talking about your experience with how you channel. But I loved your analogy of the trees, where different magic is a different branch on a tree, and there's not just one type of tree in the forest. There are so many different types, and they all can stem back to a centralized, I want to use the term nervous system, like beneath the ground, like they're all connected somewhere deep, but how they express once they leave the ground is all unique to the person or to the the experience or whatever. So I mean it's a really cool understanding if you think about it that way, where you and Lori have both have gifts, but she's a different type of tree than you, and there's different levels at which, like, oh, her tree's sprouting and it's at like like medium height, and yours is a little bit higher because you've just been harvesting it more. I am getting too deep and I kill everything, so I really shouldn't be talking about gardening, but
Enjoy the sun.
I but I think that it's a cool analogy to start thinking about. Again, I think our theme of today, which is opening our minds to possibilities, that things beyond our knowledge exist.
We talk a lot about using your own intuition. Like we
Hmm.
talk a lot about like everybody just if we could start just like checking in with ourselves.
Yeah.
Anything you're doing, if you're in a room and somebody's channeling a being or I'm doing a reading and channeling, if it doesn't feel right, it's just not right for you.
Mhm.
And that's okay. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just not your thing, and you have a different path. And I think we got to get comfortable with that too. And I'm saying this for my benefit as much as anyone else's, because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, what the hell are these people doing? And it's like, yeah, but they say the same thing about me. Yeah, I could be reading
Hmm.
someone and they're thinking, this chick's wild. She didn't know what the hell she's
Yeah.
talking about.
You've had readings with me, and I've said shit that you makes you go, this guy is probably fucking crazy. Because I heard it. And I called you out
She
on it
thinks you're
once.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, once I'm sure I have once or twice, like, what the fuck is going on right now?
But then
But I keep
something
coming
happened.
back. So, yeah,
And
Yeah.
I have so many people that come back to me like years past. Like recently, a couple months back, I think in the beginning of December, someone called me who hadn't spoken to me for over 6 years because they were in shock for 6 years that what I told them came to fruition, like
damn,
almost verbatim. And they have
yeah,
it recorded. So if you
yeah,
go and look in the Yelp reviews under the business that I work under, and go back some years, you'll actually have people that call up and go, no, we have recording. Brandon talked about COVID before COVID happened. And I kept telling all of my clients for
Crazy.
2 years, I kept telling all of my clients that would come and they would ask me about career. I'd say, do you got any crafts, any hobbies that you can make some money off of? Because that's what you need to gear towards. You need to start doing you, hun. You need to step away from
Yeah.
corporations and just do you, boo boo. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be hell.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in this mood, now that I'm in a little bit of a silly mood, I think some of these channelers that people are seeing as cultish are cultish. I very
yeah,
much feel like they are very good
yeah,
at with the using their charisma to get you to
yeah.
believe stuff.
There's real and there's not real, for sure. But
And
again, you use our filter. I think
use your
we know
filter
what's
and
pay attention and feel
learn
it.
how to see auras.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
meditate. And meditate doesn't just mean going all day long. Okay.
Yeah,
You can be in a shower and you can have the lights off, but you can have candles on. And you can
yeah,
take your time to enjoy the feeling of the shower. Have
yeah,
the right type of music playing and get lost in the music.
yeah,
Trust
for sure.
yourself that you know how to bathe yourself because you've been doing it long enough that you should know how to do it. And if you don't, please watch some videos online. I'm sure we can find them anywhere at this point.
Oh God.
We'll send you
Yeah.
some
Just
links. Just
You
let
it's
us know.
know,
okay. Don't worry about it.
I
but
love
like that's a form of
I love
meditation. Or
Yeah.
if you really like to bake and you trust yourself with a recipe, you don't have to constantly be looking at the cookbook. Zone out. Let the music
yeah,
go. Get lost in that. I am a kitchen witch and I am proud of that. Because people,
yeah,
when they eat my food, they feel the intention behind it.
yeah,
Like if I'm sick, great. It's soup time for me, and I
Mhm.
will feel better by the end of that night. I will push what I need out. So I'm still also discovering what I can do. I love
yeah,
challenges from people.
forever.
Like when clients come to me and they ask me random things, I love the challenge. I love the challenge. What I hate though are the individuals that try to fool me and then they
Oh,
argue with me when I call them on it.
yeah, that's
Oh,
bad.
I want to be a
That's
fly on the wall in that session, but good for you for calling them out.
This was years back when I was still seeing people in person, that I
yeah,
would have people come to me and they would attempt to fool me or try to lie to me about
oh,
something. Like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm a great person. I'm a great person. I'm the best person in the world. And every last one of the spirits behind them, their ancestors, their ancestral deities, their co-workers, their family members, their children, all going, can you please tell her she's delusional and she needs psychology?
Help. Psychology. She
he
doesn't need a
needs
spirit. She
We
needs a
psychology.
we don't need just
psychiatrist. She
we
needs
don't need
drugs.
just therapy. We need everything that is psychology thrown at
Be
her.
committed.
Take the book
Throw
Oh,
it
and
yeah.
all.
just smash it, And I've had
I
men
love
come to
it.
me also where they're so delulu that someone loves them, and it's
Oh,
like,
good. Calm
okay,
down. Yeah.
listen. She said hello to you because it's her job. She's a barista.
Oh no.
Software potential
He
right
was
there.
real
That's it.
Oh
nice to you,
no.
bro, because he's a bartender, and that's how they make their
Yikes.
tips.
Yeah, yikes. Yeah, that's a little reality sprinkle right
He's like,
there.
I was in this store called Rhinestone, like Rhino. What is it? Spearmint Rhino. I was in this place called Spearmint Rhino, and she was so kind to me. I want to marry her. And you're like, okay, calm down. Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's hilarious. Well, okay.
But funny thing,
We were,
just to toss this out there, if we ever decide to discuss reincarnation or past lives again, I have a
yes,
funny stripper story for you.
I love these.
And it's
leave us on
my
a
personal experience.
cliffhanger.
Oh my
Leave us
God.
on a cliffhanger. Terrible.
Okay,
All right.
on the screen anymore. What's happening? There's
Move,
the
you moved too
Sit up.
far back from the screen. Come a little closer.
Yeah, you have to come closer.
oh
There
man,
she
this
is.
thing's taking me out today.
You
Okay,
need to
anyway,
you
All
need to
right.
have more
Well,
light in your room.
yeah,
probably. And I'm
before
moving around because I can't sit still because I'm like a freaking 2-year-old. I can't, I'm like,
before we lose Lori entirely, Brandon, always a pleasure. We just love chatting with you. So thank you for being here on an evening. It's dark out. No one can see it, but it is. And it's just so fun. And now we have a cliffhanger for next time, everybody. Stripper story from
Yeah, it's
Brandon.
fun to
Love
do.
it. Yeah.
I'm writing that down. That's too good.
Yeah, that's the next episode is just stripper stories. Just we're not even talking about magic. We're just talking about strippers the whole time.
I could
I
actually talk
will.
about magic with that Dionysus daddy. He
Oh,
does love his worker.
heyo.
He loves his workers. You know how to
Yep.
use your body
Heyo.
to take a line from the producers. If you got it,
Yeah.
flaunt it.
Flaunt it.
And
Love.
everybody has
One of my
got
favorites.
it.
I love it. I
Ooh,
love
I like that too. Okay, next time we're talking about everyone having it, flaunting it, and maybe undressing. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being on here on another episode of Beyond Dimensional. We're so pleased to have talked to Brandon again. You know where to find him, but we're going to add it in the show notes. He's incredible. Go talk to him for yourself. Until next time, bitches and witches. Catch you later.
Bye.
Go.